pulled away. Now he can't stop thinking about you. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that when you stop chasing something, it starts chasing you? You were all in. You gave your energy, your time, your presence, but something felt off. And the moment you stepped back, boom, everything shifted. Why? Because human nature is wired for desire, and desire thrives on space. Have you ever noticed how the moment you stop chasing something, it suddenly becomes more interested in you? This isn't just coincidence, it's human nature. The way we perceive value is directly connected to availability. When something is easily accessible, we don't give it much thought. But when it becomes scarce, it triggers an innate response of desire. This principle applies to relationships, business, and even the way we interact with the world around us. Think about it. Have you ever had a moment where you were texting someone constantly, giving them attention, showing them love, yet they didn't seem to appreciate it? Maybe they even started pulling away, acting distant, or seeming uninterested. But the moment you stopped initiating, something changed. Suddenly, they started reaching out. They started wondering what happened, why you weren't available like before. That shift didn't happen because they suddenly discovered new feelings. It happened because you created space. And that space made them feel the loss of your presence. We are wired to want what we feel we can't fully have. If something is always in front of us, it's easy to overlook. It blends into the background. It becomes part of the routine, something expected rather than exciting. But the moment it's removed, a void is created, and that void commands attention. This is why desire thrives in space, not in constant availability. Look at the world of luxury brands. Why do people desire high-end watches, rare collectibles, or exclusive memberships? It's not just about quality, it's about perception. The idea that something is limited, that not everyone can have it, makes it infinitely more attractive. The same applies to relationships. If you are always available, always responding instantly, always seeking connection, you create the illusion that you will always be there. There's no urgency, no mystery. But when you pull back, when you shift your focus to yourself, something powerful happens. You introduce the element of uncertainty. And uncertainty is a magnet for attention. This isn't about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about understanding a fundamental truth. People don't value what they don't have to work for. When you are constantly giving your energy away without a second thought, others come to expect it rather than appreciate it. But when you step back, when you redirect that energy inward, you change the dynamic completely. Now let's talk about the science behind this. Studies in psychology show that intermittent reinforcement, the idea that rewards are given unpredictably rather than consistently, creates the strongest emotional responses. It's why people get hooked on gambling, social media, or unpredictable relationships. The brain craves patterns, but is most engaged when those patterns are disrupted. So when someone is used to your constant presence and suddenly experiences a shift, their mind starts working overtime to figure out what happened. And that thought process leads to attachment. Think about your own life. Have you ever been in a situation where someone who was always there suddenly became distant? Maybe it was a friend, a partner, or even a colleague. The moment their presence lessened, you started thinking about them more. You started wondering what changed, questioning their feelings, and even feeling a little anxious about the shift. This reaction isn't a conscious choice. It's a natural response to loss. The human mind focuses on what's missing far more than what's present. So when you step back, when you stop giving all your energy away, you create an environment where someone has to start thinking about you. They begin to notice the absence of your attention, the lack of your presence. They start recalling the way you made them feel when you were fully engaged. And most importantly, they begin to question what they might have taken for granted. That's when the real shift happens. But here's the key. You don't just pull away for the sake of getting attention. You pull away because your energy is valuable. Your time, your focus, your presence, it all has worth. And the more you recognize that, the more others will as well. When you stop making yourself overly accessible, you become more desirable. Not because you're being distant, but because you're showing that you are someone who values themselves enough to not chase after what isn't reciprocated. In the end, space is what makes attraction grow. It allows desire to breathe, to expand, to take root. It forces people to reflect on what they had, what they miss, and what they truly want. And when you understand this, you stop fearing distance. Instead, you embrace it as a powerful tool in creating the kind of connections where you are valued, respected, and deeply desired. When something is always available, it loses its sense of urgency. It becomes expected rather than appreciated. This is a fundamental truth of human nature. We don't crave what we know we can have at any time. Instead, we desire what feels just out of reach, what carries a sense of exclusivity, what seems to hold a value that not everyone can access. This is why scarcity is one of the most powerful forces in attraction, relationships, and even business. The less available something appears to be, the more valuable it becomes in the eyes of others. Think about the most sought-after experiences in life. Limited edition products, VIP access, exclusive events. What do they all have in common? They are not easily accessible to everyone. That sense of rarity creates intrigue, a sense of urgency, and a heightened perception of value. It's not necessarily because they are better than other options, but because they are not readily available. This is why people will camp outside a store for the latest phone, pay exorbitant prices for rare sneakers, or long for an invitation to an exclusive club. The feeling that something is scarce makes people believe that it must be worth having. Now, apply this to relationships. When you are always available, always reaching out first, always prioritizing someone else's needs over your own, you create the illusion that you are always within reach. And when something is always within reach, it becomes easy to overlook. The moment you pull away, however, something powerful happens. You introduce an element of scarcity. Suddenly, your attention is not guaranteed. Your presence is no longer something to be taken for granted. And that shift in energy changes everything. Scarcity activates a deep psychological response. The mind fixates on what is no longer guaranteed, on what is suddenly uncertain. This is why people don't realize what they have until it's gone. It's not that they never cared, it's that they never had to question whether or not it would be there. The moment they feel a void, the moment they sense that something they once had easy access to is no longer guaranteed, their perception of its value increases. This is why people regret breakups after some time has passed, why an ex suddenly reaches out after months of silence, why someone who once seemed indifferent starts showing interest when you stop making an effort. It's not about manipulation, it's about understanding how value works. If you were given 100 diamonds every day, they would lose their significance. But if you were given one diamond, just once, you would cherish it. People value what is not easily replaced. When you create scarcity, you force people to ask themselves, what if I never experience this again? That question alone can shift how they perceive you. Think about a time when you were the one feeling a sense of loss. Maybe it was someone who always gave you attention, and then one day they stopped. You may not have been thinking much about them before, but once their presence was no longer there, you started noticing. You started wondering what happened, why they weren't as engaged as they once were. This is not about ego or arrogance. It's about the way the mind processes change. A sudden absence is far more noticeable than a consistent presence. When you pull away, you allow someone the space to reflect. They begin to replay moments, to think about how your energy made them feel, to question why they may have taken it for granted. And the more they reflect, the more they realize that what they had with you was unique. This is why distance often brings clarity. When someone is no longer bombarded with your presence, they have the opportunity to experience life without it. And if that absence feels significant, it sparks a desire to reconnect, to pull you back into their world. This is not about withholding affection or love. It's about recognizing your own worth. It's about knowing that your energy, your attention, and your presence are not things to be given away freely to those who do not appreciate them. It's about shifting your mindset from seeking validation to embodying self-respect. When you understand that your value increases when you are not overly available, you begin to carry yourself differently. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth because you know it exists, and that energy, that quiet confidence, is magnetic. In every aspect of life, from relationships to business to personal growth, scarcity increases value. The less you give away freely, the more people desire it. When you pull back, when you stop making yourself so easily accessible, you shift from being an option to being a priority. People do not chase what is always there. They chase what they fear they might lose. And that is where true attraction begins. Your self-worth is the foundation upon which every relationship is built. It dictates how others treat you, how they perceive you, and ultimately, how they value you. When you see yourself as someone who is valuable, irreplaceable, and worthy of love and respect, others have no choice but to follow suit. But the problem is, many people give away their power without even realizing it. They seek external validation, hoping that if they do enough, give enough, or prove themselves enough, they will finally be appreciated. This mindset is a trap, and it keeps you stuck in a cycle of overgiving and under-receiving. Think about the people in your life whom you respect the most. Are they the ones who bend over backward for everyone, who constantly seek approval, who never set boundaries? Or are they the ones who carry themselves with confidence, who don't beg for attention, who know their worth without needing reassurance? The answer is obvious. People respect those who respect themselves. They are drawn to those who don't need to prove anything because that energy is powerful. Confidence is silent, insecurity is loud. When you understand this, you stop chasing and start attracting. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing that their worth is dependent on someone else's validation. They think if he chooses me, I must be special. If he ignores me, I must not be enough. But that is an illusion. Your worth does not fluctuate based on someone else's perception of you. It is constant. The moment you internalize this truth, you stop feeling anxious about whether someone notices you, calls you, or reciprocates your energy. Instead, you become grounded in the understanding that whether or not they see your value, it remains unchanged. People can feel when you need them to validate you. It creates an imbalance, an energy that repels rather than attracts. Desperation is not appealing. It signals that you don't fully believe in your own value, and if you don't believe it, why should they? On the other hand, when you hold yourself to a higher standard, when you refuse to settle for anything less than what you deserve, you naturally command respect. You don't need to convince anyone to see your worth. They feel it, and if they don't, that's their loss, not yours. The moment you shift your focus from seeking validation to embodying self-worth, everything changes. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop fearing rejection because you understand that rejection is just redirection towards something better. You stop waiting for someone else to recognize your value, and instead, you walk with the certainty that you are enough. This shift is magnetic. It draws people in, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you genuinely don't need external approval to feel complete. When you know your worth, you move differently. You don't chase people who don't appreciate you. You don't beg for attention. You don't accept half-hearted efforts or tolerate inconsistency. Instead, you set standards, and those standards filter out anyone who isn't aligned with your value. The right people will rise to meet you. The wrong people will fall away. And both outcomes are a win because you are no longer settling for anything less than what you truly deserve. This doesn't mean you become cold or unapproachable. It means you become selective. There's a difference between being closed off and having high standards. The former is rooted in fear, while the latter is rooted in self-respect. When you respect yourself, you teach others how to treat you. If you allow people to be inconsistent, to disrespect you, to undervalue you, they will continue to do so. But when you hold firm in your worth, when you show up with confidence and authenticity, you naturally attract those who see your value without you having to prove it. People are drawn to certainty. They gravitate toward those who exude a quiet, unshakable confidence. When you embody self-worth, you send a clear message. I am valuable, and I don't need anyone to validate that for me. That energy is rare and is incredibly attractive. It makes people take notice. It makes them want to be around you, not because you're trying to impress them, but because you have something that most people lack, a deep, unwavering belief in yourself. At the end of the day, the most powerful thing you can do is stand firm in your worth, to refuse to beg for attention, to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you, to know that you are enough exactly as you are. Because when you truly believe that, others will too. And that is the key to becoming someone who is not just wanted, but deeply valued. People are creatures of habit. We fall into routines, patterns, and expectations without even realizing it. When something feels predictable, our brains process it as background noise. But the moment something disrupts that pattern, it commands our attention. This is one of the most powerful psychological principles when it comes to attraction, relationships, and influence. The human mind is wired to notice contrast, and when that contrast appears in a relationship, it creates an undeniable shift. Think about it. When someone behaves the same way every day, you stop thinking about it. It becomes expected. You don't wake up in the morning and feel excitement about the sun rising because it happens every day. But if one morning the sky turned purple, you would stop everything you were doing and pay attention. Why? Because something that was once predictable has suddenly changed, and your brain is now hyper-focused on understanding it. The same principle applies to relationships. When you are always available, always responding instantly, always initiating conversations, and always giving your energy freely, you create a pattern. The person on the receiving end gets used to it. They don't have to think about whether or not you'll be there. You always are. Your presence, no matter how valuable, becomes something they subconsciously take for granted. Not because they don't care, but because they never had to question it. Now imagine that you suddenly change the pattern. You stop reaching out first. You don't respond immediately. You shift your energy from constantly being available to focusing on yourself. That change, however small, disrupts their expectation. Suddenly they notice. They wonder why you're not as engaged as you used to be. They start questioning if something has changed. That moment of uncertainty is where attraction is reignited, because now they are thinking about you in a way they weren't before. The brain hates uncertainty. When someone is unsure about where they stand with you, it creates a psychological pull. They start filling in the blanks, wondering if they did something wrong, if you're losing interest, or if they miscalculated how much you cared. This kind of contrast forces them to reevaluate their feelings. It introduces an element of unpredictability that makes them crave reassurance. And in doing so, it makes them focus on you more than they ever did when you were predictable. This is why playing hard to get has always been an effective psychological trigger, not because it's a game, but because it naturally introduces contrast. It creates moments of presence and absence, of engagement and withdrawal. It forces the other person to put in effort, to notice, to appreciate. However, this isn't about manipulation. It's about breaking a cycle of predictability so that someone is reminded of your value. When you step back, it forces them to step forward. When you stop giving away your attention so freely, it makes them realize that your attention was never something to be taken for granted. The key, however, is that this shift has to be genuine. If you are only pulling away as a tactic, it won't work long term. But if you truly redirect your energy inward, if you become more engaged in your own growth, your own happiness, your own life, then the change is real. And that authenticity is what makes it powerful. Now, let's take this a step further. When you introduce contrast, it's not just about pulling back, it's also about how you re-engage. If you disappear entirely, the other person may assume you lost interest and move on. But if you create moments where your presence is felt, then withdraw again, you create a cycle of desire. This could be as simple as having a great conversation and then being unavailable for a while, or sharing a meaningful moment and then giving them space to process it. That ebb and flow is what makes relationships dynamic and exciting. The most powerful people in relationships are those who know when to be present and when to step back. They understand that constantly giving is not the way to build attraction. Instead, it's about allowing space for the other person to feel their own emotions. When someone misses you, it's because you've given them the opportunity to experience life without you for a moment. And that moment of absence is what makes them realize your impact. When you introduce contrast, you shift the balance of power. You are no longer the person who is always available, always giving, always waiting. You become someone who is centered, self-sufficient, and in control of your own energy. That shift makes people take notice. It makes them appreciate your presence because they have felt your absence. It forces them to engage, to think, to value. And in that moment, attraction is no longer something you have to chase. It becomes something that naturally pulls them toward you. Energy is one of the most powerful forces in human interaction. It is not just about what you say or do. It is about the energy you bring into a space, into a conversation, into a relationship. People are naturally drawn to those who radiate confidence, self-assurance, and a sense of purpose. And they are equally repelled by those who exude desperation, neediness, or insecurity. The way you carry yourself, the way you engage with the world, and the way you hold your own energy determines how people perceive and respond to you. Think about the most captivating people you've met. They don't beg for attention. They don't chase after others. Instead, they exude a quiet confidence, a magnetic energy that makes others want to be around them. They are not seeking validation because they already know their worth. And that energy, that certainty, is what makes them irresistible. The reason this works is simple. When you own your energy, you communicate non-verbally that you are someone of value, that you are someone worth noticing, respecting, and desiring. On the other hand, when your energy is scattered, when you are constantly worrying about whether someone likes you, whether they are thinking about you, whether they will text you back, you are sending out an entirely different signal. That energy feels frantic, unstable, and ungrounded. And people can sense it. Even if you say all the right words, even if you try to appear confident, your energy will always reveal the truth. And people respond to energy far more than they respond to words. Owning your energy is about shifting the focus from others back to yourself. It means no longer waiting for someone else's approval before you feel good. No longer allowing someone else's attention, or lack of it, to dictate your self-worth. It means standing firm in who you are, knowing that whether someone chooses to engage with you or not, your value remains unchanged. When you operate from this mindset, you become instantly more attractive. Not because you are trying to be, but because self-assurance is rare and incredibly powerful. This is why people who are deeply passionate about their own lives, their own goals, their own growth, always seem to have others drawn to them. They are not chasing, they are simply living. And in doing so, they become naturally magnetic. When you stop obsessing over whether someone is thinking about you, when you stop giving all your energy away to the external world and instead redirect it inward, you shift from seeking to attracting. You become someone that people want to be around, not because you need them, but because your energy is undeniable. Owning your energy is also about emotional control. It means not allowing yourself to be thrown off balance every time someone acts distant, every time a text is left unanswered, every time you feel uncertainty creeping in. It means choosing how you respond instead of reacting impulsively. Because the moment you let someone else dictate your emotions, you give away your power. And when you give away your power, you lose your natural attraction. People are drawn to those who remain steady, who do not get easily shaken, who maintain their sense of self no matter what. That stability is rare. Most people are reactive. They chase when they feel ignored. They overcompensate when they feel insecure. They grasp for control when they feel uncertain. But the most attractive people do the opposite. They lean back, they remain centered, they trust that what is meant for them will naturally come. And because of that, they become a force that others cannot ignore. This shift is not about playing games or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about genuinely stepping into a space where you trust yourself, where you no longer seek permission to feel valuable, where you no longer allow external circumstances to dictate your inner world. This is a process of rewiring your mindset so that you no longer operate from lack, but from abundance, from a place of knowing that you are enough, regardless of who notices or doesn't notice. When you own your energy, you automatically shift the way people interact with you. Suddenly, those who once overlooked you start paying attention. Those who once took you for granted begin to value you, not because you forced them to, but because you became someone who is naturally valued. And that is the ultimate power. Not needing external validation, but knowing that you are already complete. Because when you carry yourself with that level of certainty, others have no choice but to see it too. And that right there is the secret. You don't need to chase, beg, or prove your worth to anyone. The moment you pull away, you create space for someone to recognize your value. The moment you introduce scarcity, they start thinking about you in ways they never did before. The moment you embody confidence, self-respect, and certainty, you become magnetic. Thank you for your time, your energy, and for showing up today. Go out there and own your worth. You deserve it. Until next time, take care and stay unstoppable.